graders, I am Mrs. Lamondo here to talk to you all about decimals. So we are moving into this math unit and I think that you will enjoy it and I don't think it'll be too tricky at all. So let's start out with our very first lesson talking about turning fractions into decimals. First, we're going to start with this video that will kind of give us an overview of how to turn fractions into decimals.
Decimals to fractions, part 1. Now that you've gone through your fractions unit, I want to introduce the next step. Fractions are parts of a whole, and decimals are also parts of a whole. A number can be shown as both a decimal and a fraction. Changing between decimals and fractions is a must-have math skill, and it's easy to do. We use our place value knowledge. Here's a place value chart. The decimal point goes here. On the left of the decimal is where we put our whole numbers. And on the right of the decimal is where we've got our fractional parts. The first column is tenths, then we've got hundredths and thousandths and so on. If I have a value, we can put it into the place value chart. Line up the decimal point and then it's 1 digit per column. There is only 1 digit after the decimal point and it's sitting in the tenths column. So 0.3 is the same as 3 tenths because the 3 is in the tenths column. Easy. The digits after the decimal point become your numerator. And to find the denominator, just think through your tenths, hundredths and thousandths columns. Let's do some examples. Okay, the numerator is 7. There's only one figure after the decimal point. It's in the tenths column. 0.7 is 7 tenths. 0.23. This is 23 over something. Now we get the denominator. First column is tenths. Second column is hundredths. We have 23 hundredths. Here we've got 3 figures after the decimal point. We don't even really need to use a chart at all, do we? 391 is our numerator. Just name the columns to find the denominator. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. 391 over 1000. Okay, what about this number? 5.3. Well, we know what to do with the decimal part, but how about that 5? Remember, to the right of the decimal point are fractions of a whole one, and to the left of the decimal point you've got whole numbers. It's a whole number and a fractional part. This value is going to be a mixed number. 5 whole ones here. 0.3 tells us our numerator is 3, and as we only have a single digit after the decimal point, that means tenths. 5 and 3 tenths. Okay with that? Great stuff. Last one. 12.79. 12 whole ones. And here, 79 is our numerator. Name the decimal columns to find the denominator. Tenths, hundredths. See, you can easily change from decimals to fractions. Next, you're going to do some for yourself. And then there's just a little bit more to put into place. But first, get confident with this. See you next time.
In that video, they went all the way to the thousandths place. For our purposes, we're going to stay in the tenths and, hundredths. So we're only going to go as far as the hundredths. Now, she showed a lot of examples of how to go from a decimal to a fraction. Going from a fraction to a decimal is very, very similar as well. Let's take a look. So here I have a worksheet. So remember, in our place value chart, we're always going to have the 0 because we're not going to have any mixed numbers. And then we're going to have, I'm just going to write it like this, and I'll show you in a second, tenths and hundredths. So we have it just like that. So here, when we are saying for our first one, number 1, 7/10, we put a 7 in the tenths place. That's easy. It's just 0.7. We say 7/10. Let's look at number 2. Number 2 is 11/100ths, meaning we have to go to the hundredths place. We can't put an 11 here. We can only put one digit. So we say 11/100ths. Our decimal would be 0.11. We say 11/100ths. Let's look at the next one. 4/10. Let's pause and write out how we would write that as a decimal, 4/10. If you got 0.4, you are right. Let's look at problem number 4. We have 80/100ths. Let's pause and think about how we would write this as a decimal. If you got 0.80, you are correct. That's how we write 80/100ths. Let's look at number 5. Number 5 says 18/100ths. Let's pause and think about how to write that. For number 5, if you had 0.18, you are correct. That's how we write 18/100ths. Let's look at number 6. For number 6, we need to do 3/10. Let's pause and think about how to write that. If you have 0.3, you are correct. That's how we write 3/10. Let's look at number 7. Number 7 is 6/10. Let's pause and think about how to write that. If you have 0.6, you are correct. That's how we write 6/10. Let's look at number 8. 0.5. I'm sorry, 56/100ths. How would we write that? I was giving you a hint right there. Let's pause and write it. 56/100ths would be 0.56. Awesome job. All right, let's look at number 9, 36/100ths. Let's pause and think about how to write that. It should be 0.36. Awesome job. Let's look now at number 10, 11, and 12. We'll pause and write all of them. We have 46/100ths, 9/10ths, and 7/10ths. How do we write those 3 decimal points? Let's pause and try it. For number 10, we should have 0.46. For number 11, we should have 0.9. And for number 12, we should have 0.7. You guys are doing great. All right, let's look at our next 3 examples. 13, 14, and 15. We have 86/100ths, 2/10ths, and 52/100ths. Let's pause and write these 3 as a decimal. Number 13 should be 0.86. Number 14 should be 0.2. And number 15 should be 0.52. Excellent job. All right, you guys are doing so wonderfully with changing fractions to decimals. Let's take a look at our Google form for today. Today we are going to complete decimals lesson 1. Of course, you'll put your name. So what is 15 hundredths as a decimal? You see 3 different options. You're going to choose the best one. It may be helpful to write it out on a whiteboard first before you make your choice. Our second one, what is 7/10 as a decimal? You're going to make your best choice. Number 3, what is 11 hundredths as a decimal? Make your best choice. Next one, what is 4/10 as a decimal? Again, you're going to make your best choice. Number 5, what is 80 hundredths as a decimal? And number 6, what is 18 hundredths as a decimal? Again, if you need help, feel free to check in with your teacher. It may be helpful to write down what you think the right answer is and then choose it in your form. All right, 4th graders, that's all for today. Until next time, I'll see you then. Bye.